Hey everyone, so I wanted to do a quick video on where I think my FND derives from. And obviously it's not been proven. This is like exactly where it's come from. You've done this and this is how it's happened. But many people allude to the possibility that it comes from emotional trauma. You know, you could have lost a loved one, so on and so forth. Could have been in an accident as well. That's one thing that, I've spoken to a couple of people that were in terrible car accidents, and that's what led to them experiencing these symptoms. But I think for me, and by the way, I'm not doing this for sympathy. I'm doing this because I get a lot of people message me and say to me, I saw your journey video on YouTube, it made them feel less isolated, because FND is a condition that does leave you extremely isolated, especially with the lack of support from the NHS. I mean, there are plenty of good doctors as well as the ones that I would say are naive and incompetent in terms of merely viewing it as a psychological illness rather than looking at a possibility that perhaps it's not. But yeah, they are obviously Professor Mark Edwards, Professor Stone as well in Scotland. There are a lot of good health professionals who do have the right views on FND. I don't want that to be misconstrued. I do moan about many of the other professionals that I've experienced throughout my journey so far, but yes, there are a lot of good ones as well. But like I say, I get a lot of people reach out to me and say that they're more comfortable in talking about it now. Thank you, I feel less isolated, so on and so forth. And that's kind of like the gist that I want to go for in this video. I want people to, let everything out in terms of any emotional trauma that they've experienced in their life too. And talking about it definitely helps, 100%, because you can bring things to the surface that you didn't actually know bothered you, but subconsciously they were nagging at you every single day. You just didn't know it. So I think mine definitely starts with when I was a kid. I didn't speak to my dad. My dad had an affair when I was probably about, I don't know exactly, I'd say about 6 months old. So from that age to about 5, I didn't speak to him. And I remember when I was about 5 years old, my mum told me that my dad got in contact, wanted to see me, etc., etc. And I remember going to meet him at 5 years old, and met at this park. I remember playing football with him, and then I remember seeing this woman there, and I was thinking, who's that? And it was his wife, the woman who obviously he had the affair with. And I think I undermine the effect that had on me, because I kind of looked at it as though this is the woman who led to the demise of, I would actually say, my life in a sense, because growing up without your dad is, many people experience it, it's not nice. You feel like you have a void left there, and it's impossible for another family member to fulfill that entirely. But yeah, my dad I would speak to him and see him for about 6 months, and then I wouldn't see him for about 3 years. And then I'd get back in contact with him, I'd bump into him or whatever, and then I'll start speaking to him again. And then I wouldn't speak to him for another 4 years, and so on and so forth, which, I think had more of an effect on me than if I saw him continuously for 15 years and then he didn't speak to me again, because it's constant highs and lows, especially emotionally. And I think I undermine how much that would have affected me at the time, being, a kid, barely a teenager, even through adolescence, how much that affects you psychologically, because it's a feeling like, am I not good enough, etc., etc., which obviously I know now is, not the case. But I think back then you're naive to the circumstances, and it was especially difficult because when I was going through school, divorce wasn't as prominent as what it is now. now you see parents, married couples splitting up left, right, and centre. But back then, when I was in school, I sound like an old person when I say back in my day, but back then it wasn't as prominent. And I remember most of my friends, if I would go to their house, their mum or dad would be there. And I always used to be it made me feel extremely like self-conscious. Like I remember being in like French class, and you'd have to talk to the class about your family in French, obviously. And I just remember being so anxious and like self-conscious about being judged because, you know, I didn't see my dad. And if I was talking about who lived in my household, I would just say me and my mum. And I don't know why, you don't think rationally in terms of emotions when you're that age, and you get embarrassed about things that you shouldn't be embarrassed about. But it definitely had a bearing on me then. And it's only when I really think back and bring things like that to the surface that you realize how self-conscious it actually made you. And when I was going through probably late stages of middle school to upper school, 3-tier system where I am, I had like really bad skin, and it used to make me so self-conscious. People would say things about it, and it kind of like gave me a resentment towards a lot of people, just people in general, because I don't know, it was horrible for me. Like I couldn't even like look in the mirror. I would try everything I could to try and sort my skin problem out. I tried tons of different acne treatments, all sorts, but that was something again that made me extremely self-conscious and made me extremely resentful towards a lot of people. And I didn't, back then, when I had all those feelings and that, I didn't think with rationality, and I became, a person that I'm not proud of in a sense. I didn't treat people how people should be treated. There's no excuse, by the way, but that definitely affected me growing up. Definitely affected my confidence in a lot of ways. Like I said, I couldn't even look in the mirror. But yeah, moving on from that. So obviously growing up, your grandparents, you kind of like have a different bond with them than what you do to anyone else in your family. And that was definitely the case with my grandma and my granddad. My granddad was literally like my best friend. Like he picked me up from school. If I had a job interview, he would be taking me, he would be picking me up, he would be on the phone saying, how did it go, kind of thing. And when I was probably about 10, both my grandma and my granddad, I'm not actually sure what, I think it was ovarian cancer that my grandma had, and my granddad had prostate cancer. And they were both going through chemotherapy. And I just remember seeing my grandma, she was so self-conscious about losing her hair. So I got indigestion. I'm not gonna tear up on the video. I hope not anyway. Yeah, she was really self-conscious about losing her hair from chemo. And I think I undermined, just because I wasn't completely aware of it, doesn't mean that I didn't feel the emotional distress from it, just because I didn't know what they were going through. Because when I think back as a kid, you don't understand, you don't have any sense of what's actually going on. But I think subconsciously, knowing that something was wrong with someone that I cared about at that time, someone I cared so deeply about and had such a fond relationship with, it definitely did have a detrimental effect on my health back then. But thankfully, I think it was April 2015, my grandmother got the all clear after fighting it for 10 years. But unfortunately, I found out about 5 months prior to that, probably about November, December 2014, that my granddad's cancer had gone to his bones, and obviously making it terminal is extremely difficult to treat cancer once it spreads that far. And I remember my mum telling me, we're looking at 2 to 4 years. I remember my mum coming home from work crying because they'd had to get a nurse out to look after him. And he was an extremely proud, independent man. He was like the linchpin of my family. And like I say, he fulfilled the father figure role in my life for a lot of it, or for the entirety of it until he passed. And it was difficult to watch someone go from being extremely active, extremely fit for a 70, I think he was 72 when he passed away. No, you couldn't stop this man. He was man on a mission all the time. He was up and about. He was probably more active than me in my teenage years. He was ridiculous for his age. And I watched him slowly regress and regress and regress, and he was literally bedridden. Like I say, bone cancer spreads extremely quickly. And yeah, it was horrid to watch him go from that. You know, I remember when he was in hospital, he eventually came home to, you know, pass away at home, which is what he wanted. He wanted to die. He wanted to die at home. And I think it kind of, because I watched him regress over the space of 6 months or so until he finally passed away, July 31st, 2015, watching him go from, you know, being active in a 6-month period to, you know, being bedridden and passing away, kind of tarnished the memory that I had of him. And the only memory now that I can really picture is him not doing anything, him being stuck in bed, barely being able to move, not refusing to eat, all sorts. And I think that suppresses the emotions quite a lot that I would have felt if he would have just passed away just like that, you know, in the night or something, had a heart attack or something awful like that. And I think I would still have, you know, that fond memory of him, but like I say, the memory of that has been tarnished extremely. I can know right now it's difficult to picture him as the man that he was. And I think that, like I said, that suppresses a lot of emotions. And at the time, I was getting really bad migraines and everything. I started smoking weed. And I think that was just my way of dealing with it. But now I think it's all like come to the surface, and, you know, it's kind of like hit me subconsciously, and, you know, more than what I'm aware. But it must have been about August. Like I said about my skin, I used to get really bad, suffer from really bad acne. And I was referred to Hammersmith and Fulham Hospital for a laser treatment. I used to go there probably every 6 months. And I went there, and, you know, they do laser on your chest, on your face, on your back. And I remember I had like a mole, like here. And it's usually like a nurse, or I can't remember what job role they actually have. The nurse was doing my laser, and she said, "Hold on a minute, I need to go and get something checked." And I was thinking, what? And she said, this mole on your arm, it doesn't look right, we need to get it checked. So, yeah, I ended up having surgery to remove it, for melanoma cancer. And then, you know, continue laser treatment and treatment after that, for melanoma. This was obviously a month after my granddad had passed, and, you know, it was something like, he was like the person that I would go to kind of thing in that situation. It didn't really bother me that much, I'll be honest with you. And like I said, I think I suppressed my emotions at that time. I was completely emotionless in a sense. It's pretty scary when I look back. But yeah, then I ended up having another surgery for a lesion on my chest as well, which came back benign, thankfully. And yeah, that was all. Thankfully, they got it early, and, you know, it didn't progress any further. But yeah, so that topped off a whirlwind 6 months. And then a year later, so my mum remarried, maybe, I want to say 2012, maybe 2011. My mum remarried, and, sorry, notifications going off on my phone. My mum remarried, and yeah, I had a new father figure in my life in the shape of my stepdad, and I was extremely fond of him. I just remember being quite joyous because I had a male figure in the household. Obviously, I love football. I say obviously, like, you're gonna know that, but yeah, I love football. and it was obviously something that didn't really resonate with my mum. She didn't really like take much interest in it, and don't really expect her to. But it was so, I just remember being so joyful that I had someone in the house that like had that had that synergy with, you know. It was so nice for me, because obviously I knew all my friends, you know, they'd go to their dad, take them out to play football and everything. Yeah. So my stepdad was, you know, he came and fulfilled that role, and then I knew that he was unwell because he used to have to inject himself every single day. I knew that he had haemophilia, but what I didn't know was, you've probably seen it in the news. It's quite prominent in the news recently. My mum had to give evidence for what's it called, the public inquiry that's going on. But he was a victim of the infected blood scandal in the 70s, late 70s, 80s, where the government basically, because he was a haemophiliac, he had to have a blood transfusion. I don't know like the exact details, but yeah, he had to have a blood transfusion, and the blood that they got over was infected. You know, people caught AIDS, hepatitis A, but I'm not sure the exact classifications of it, so I'm not going to pretend like I know. But yeah, I think he had hepatitis C, and I wasn't really aware that eventually would actually kill him one day. So my granddad died July 2014, and then must have been June. My mum said to me that my stepdad, you know, he'd been to Addenbrooke's Hospital in Cambridge where he goes for his haemophilia, and they found that he had pancreatic cancer. And this was hard for me because I had quite a difficult relationship with him towards the end. It was a little bit frosty. You know, I don't think he was used to. He'd never married. He'd never had children. So I don't think he was used to having, you know, me as such, you know, a kid around. And it, you know, it was, like I said, became a bit of a frosty relationship. We still cared about each other. It wasn't like that. I think it was just like a clash of. Obviously, I wasn't used to having a male figure in the house. He wasn't used to having a child or a teenager as I was then. So hearing that was difficult for me. Really difficult. Obviously difficult for my mum as well because she just lost her dad a year before that. And that was like the first death in my family as well. And I remember my mum saying that, you know, it's terminal, but we don't know how long he's going to have. He could have years. And then I remember her saying, literally about 3 weeks later, that she saw him and he wasn't looking very good. You know, things weren't looking too promising. It was pancreatic cancer, which you know, I know from hearing about it from other people is absolutely horrendous in terms of what it does to the person. Like most cancers, but pancreatic cancer kills very quickly. And I remember my mum went to see him on the Saturday. He had just come back from hospital, and she came back and said, "I don't want you to go and see him because I don't want you to see him like that." Because she was aware of my tarnished memory of my granddad, and she didn't want that to, you know, be the same thing for him. So that was on the Saturday. Next day on the Sunday, my mum had gone out shopping, and I remember the police knocked at my door, and I was thinking, oh shit, what have I done? Kind of thing. I was like, do I run? Do I hide? Trying to think of everything, you know. What did I do? But I opened the door. He said to me, you know, is your mum in? I said, no, she's gone out. And he said, don't worry, I'll get on the phone, tell her to come, and I'll come back. And I kind of thought in my head, I was thinking, it must be my stepdad, something must have happened. And I was thinking, shall I drive around? Because he, you know, we moved out in the end, which made it even more difficult. I remember thinking, should I drive around because he literally lived around the corner. I was thinking, should I drive around there and see? Because if I see an ambulance, if I see a police car outside, I'll know straight away. And obviously my mum was extremely anxious coming home. And my mum said to me, she was like, it's not going to be him. It's not going to be him. She said, because I remember watching something on TV, and I don't know why she said this, but she said, if they were going to tell me that someone had died, they'd send 2 female officers round to break the news to me. So it can't be that, because it was just 1 male officer that came round. And I remember waiting by the phone, waiting anxiously. By the time obviously my mum rushed back, and then I remember the doorbell rang, and obviously I went to get it, and I remember seeing 2 silhouettes of through the glass, and it was 2 female officers, and I thought, fuck, like I just couldn't believe it, that the way that she said that to reassure herself, and then what is actually going on. And yeah, they found out that I think his neighbour went round, and obviously he didn't answer the door. His neighbour knew of his health circumstances, so I think he forced entry, and then obviously saw him, he died that night. And I remember it was bizarre because he left his will out on the side. He left his medication out, everything. So he knew that night that he was going to pass away, which was difficult to take. I just lost my granddad, and then that was the primary father figure in my life. And then my stepdad became my primary father figure. I've never had a death in my family like as severe as that. So to lose 2 so close together, and then the emotional effect that had on my mom as well, But I think it's good that I'm aware of the effects that would have had on me. And like I said, I started smoking weed, and I went numb in a sense, because I think that was just me trying to escape it all, because I knew that the worst day of my life would be the day that I lost my grandfather. I knew from a kid that would be the worst point of my life. So it's weird when I look back in hindsight and I think about how well I dealt with it. Obviously, this was 4 years ago. It's coming up to the four-year anniversary, if I can get my words out. So, and I think it kind of like all hit me at once. Kind of all hit me at once, the emotions and everything. And then I think that going through that, like I said, going through with my actual father when I was a kid, going through all of that, and not getting my emotions out. If you feel a certain way, I would encourage you to get the emotions out there, get them out of your system. If you're talking to someone, whether you're going through therapy, do not suppress your emotions, because I believe that's what's been detrimental in leading me to having FMD. Obviously, I don't know it's FMD because I haven't been diagnosed, but I'll probably put my hands on the fact that it's pretty clear I have a functional neurological disorder, because all my tests come back fine. But yeah, do not suppress your emotions, because they will eat up at you inside subconsciously, 100%. Like I say, talking to someone helps, but hope with this, if someone sees this and they've been through something, whether it's a death, whether it's a divorce, whether their partner's cheated on them, had an affair, so on and so forth, but get your emotions out there. Don't hold them in, because, like I say, I think I've definitely paid the price for that, 100%. But like I said, I don't want sympathy. That's not what this video is for. It's for encouraging people, especially people that are suffering with FND, to be open about their emotions, because that will help you get to the root cause of it if it is emotional trauma, which in my case I definitely think it is. But yeah, I love hearing people's stories. Obviously I don't love hearing them because they're very real, and upsets me that people have been in the same situation as me when it comes to fighting for an FND diagnosis or fighting for any diagnosis for their symptoms. But I'll put my email below. Get in touch with me, let me know your story, because like I say, I'm forming a petition to help raise awareness for FND. FND hope are going to Parliament in October, which is an amazing achievement. Like I said, I think I mentioned it in my previous video, but on behalf of myself and everyone else suffering, thank you so much for all your work. Appreciate it no end. I spoke to Dawn, who's exec director for FND Hope, lovely lady, and detriment to all of her efforts, I'm sure, and her colleagues in the UK. So thank you. But what I'm going to do next is, I've got my second opinion next Friday. I've literally spent like the last few days bedridden. I started getting better. And what I'm going to do next is a video on dealing with anxiety and depression when you're also experiencing symptoms, because like I said, I was bedridden, and I feel like I'm starting to slowly get better, because I'm unraveling these wounds and like I say, bringing them to the surface. But yeah, hopefully this helps at least one person to bring their emotional trauma to the surface, no matter what it may be. And hopefully helps someone, even in the smallest way. That's my intentions. But yeah, thanks for watching, and stay tuned. I'll probably do it tomorrow, how I'm dealing with anxiety and depression from a chronic illness. So yeah, please subscribe, and I'll see you soon.